This is not just a story. This is revenge.
The morning after my father-in-law's funeral, my husband handed me divorce papers. I signed them without reading a single line. He thought he had won. He had no idea that the man we had just buried had spent the last 3 years making sure he never would. Before we begin, please like and subscribe. Now get comfortable, because this one will stay with you. My name is Margaret Collins. I grew up in Harlan, Kentucky, a small town where everybody knew everybody, which sounds warm until you understand what it actually means. It means your business is never yours. It means your choices are observed and cataloged and discussed over coffee at the diner on Route 9. It means that when your father's oldest friend comes to the house one Sunday afternoon and says his son is looking for a wife, a good, steady, quiet woman, your father nods before you've said a word. I was 24. His name was Tom Whitfield. His father's name was Earl. Earl Whitfield was 61 when I married his son. He was not a large man, medium height, lean, with the kind of face that had been weathered by decades of early mornings and honest work. He had built Whitfield Hardware from nothing, a single storefront on Main Street, that had expanded, over 30 years, into a proper supply business serving contractors and builders across 3 counties. He was respected in Harlan the way certain men are respected quietly, without performance. People paid their bills to Earl Whitfield on time. That said everything. Tom was 30 when we married. He was handsome in the way that photographs lie a face that looked open and easy until you knew what to look for. He worked in his father's business, officially, in practice. He came and went as he pleased, arrived late, left early, and relied on Earl to quietly absorb the consequences. Earl never said anything about it. Not to me, not to anyone that I knew of. I would later understand why. The first time Tom hit me, we had been married 4 months. He had been drinking, which was not unusual, and I had said something he interpreted as a slight. I no longer remember what. I remember the sound more than anything. And I remember standing in the kitchen afterward, very still, trying to understand what had just happened. I did not tell anyone. In Harlan, in that house, with my father's friendship with Earl as the architecture of our marriage, I did not have a clear picture of who I would tell, or what would happen if I did. So I was quiet. I learned to read the signs, the particular way Tom's voice changed after the second drink, the way he moved through the house when he was looking for a reason. I learned to be small and undetectable in my own home, a skill that required constant, exhausting attention. Earl lived with us. His own house was 2 miles away, but he spent most evenings at ours. He sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and his newspaper. He watched the news at 7. He said goodnight at 9:30 and drove home. He never said anything directly. But I noticed, and this took me years to understand, that on the evenings Earl was in the house, Tom did not drink. I found out I was pregnant when we had been married 2 years. Tom's response was a silence that lasted 3 days, followed by a return to normal that I understood was the only acknowledgement I would receive. Earl's response was different. He was sitting at the kitchen table when I told him Tom was not home, and he looked at me for a long moment with an expression I could not fully read. Then he nodded, once, and said, "That child will be taken care of, I promise you that." It was a strange thing to say. I thought, at the time, that he meant it generally. The way older people speak in assurances that are more comfort than specifics. I would later understand he meant it precisely. My son was born on a Tuesday in March. We named him James, Earl's middle name, which was Tom's suggestion, which surprised me. It was one of the few generous things Tom did without being asked. James was from the beginning the clearest thing in my life. A small, serious baby who looked at the world with enormous attention. He learned to walk early. He learned to talk early. He asked questions constantly, about everything, with the specific relentlessness of a child who expects honest answers. I gave him honest answers when I could. Earl adored him. He came to the house more after James was born, not less. He would sit on the floor with him and build things from wooden blocks, patiently, for hours. He taught him the names of tools when James was 3. By 5, James could identify a box wrench from a socket wrench and explain the difference. Earl never said it out loud, but I understood, watching them together, that James was what kept Earl coming to that house. James. And I allowed myself to believe me. The years passed the way difficult years pass, not quickly, not slowly, but in a series of ordinary days interrupted by bad nights. Tom's drinking got worse as he got older, not better. His presence in the business became more nominal. Earl covered for him without discussion, absorbing the work and the reputation and the relationships that kept Whitfield Hardware running. I had started keeping the books for the business when James was two. Earl had asked me, quietly, if I would be willing. And I had said yes, because it gave me something structured to do, and because Earl asked in a way that made me feel trusted rather than assigned. I was good at it. Numbers were honest. They did not have moods. They did not drink. They told you exactly where things stood. I kept the books for 8 years. In that time, I learned the business the way you learn something when you're paying genuine attention, not just the numbers, but the relationships, the suppliers, the contractors, the seasonal patterns, the margins. I knew which accounts were reliable and which ones needed following up. I knew which vendors gave Earl the best terms and why. Earl knew that I knew. He never commented on it directly, but sometimes when we were going over accounts together at the kitchen table, he would look up and say something like, "You see that?" And I would say yes, and he would nod. And we would continue. It was the closest thing to being seen that I had in that house. Earl was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when James was 11. He told me before he told Tom. He came to the house on a Tuesday morning. Tom was already gone, wherever Tom went on Tuesday mornings, and sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and told me plainly. Stage 3. The doctors had given him a range somewhere between 8 months and 2 years, depending on how the treatment went. I sat across from him and listened. When he finished, I said, "What do you need?" He looked at me for a moment. "I need to know James will be all right," he said. "And I need to know you'll be all right." I said, "We will be." He nodded. He finished his coffee. He went home. 3 days later, Tom found out from someone at the hardware store, not from his father, not from me. He came home that evening sober, which was unusual, and sat in the living room looking at the television without turning it on. I made dinner. I called him to the table. He came. He did not mention his father's illness. He did not mention it that night or the next day or the day after that. This told me everything I needed to know about Tom Whitfield's relationship with grief. Earl lived for 19 months after the diagnosis. In that time, he kept coming to the house. Slower, thinner, with less color in his face, but present. He sat at the kitchen table. He watched the news. He helped James with his homework when James was stuck on something, patiently, without making him feel stupid for not knowing. He and I continued with the books. 6 months before he died, he asked me to come to his house on a Saturday morning. Tom was not invited. He was sleeping, as he usually was on Saturday mornings. I drove the 2 miles and sat in Earl's kitchen while he made coffee. He put a folder on the table. "I've made some arrangements," he said. "I want you to know about them now, not later." I opened the folder. The house Tom and I lived in, the house James had grown up in, had been in Earl's name since it was purchased. I had not known this. Tom had not mentioned it, and I had never thought to ask, having assumed it had transferred to Tom at some point. Earl had transferred it 6 months ago. To me. Not to Tom. To me. Margaret Collins Whitfield. Solely, I looked up from the document. Earl said, "It's yours. The deed is recorded. It cannot be contested." I had George Marsh handle it, and George does not make mistakes. George Marsh was the attorney in Harlan who had handled Earl's affairs for 20 years. I looked back at the folder. The second document was a business registration. Whitfield Hardware, the business Tom nominally worked for, the business I had kept the books of for 8 years, had been restructured 18 months ago into an LLC. The registered owner of the LLC was not Tom. It was James Whitfield, my son, who was 11 years old at the time of registration, with me listed as managing trustee until James turned 18. I sat with this for a long moment. Tom doesn't know, I said. It was not a question. Tom doesn't know, Earl confirmed. And he won't until it's relevant. Why? Earl wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. Outside, the Kentucky morning was gray and cold. Because Tom would have fought it while I was alive to fight back, he said. And I don't have the energy for that anymore. A pause. And because I wanted it done cleanly. Without noise. I looked at the folder. Earl, I said carefully, why are you doing this? He was quiet for a long time. Because I watched, he said finally. For 10 years, I sat at that table and I watched. And I told myself it wasn't my place. And I told myself Tom would change. And I told myself a lot of things that I knew weren't true. His voice was steady, but something behind it was not. A man can talk himself into a lot of inaction if he tries hard enough. He looked at me directly. I'm not asking you to forgive me for what I didn't do. I'm just asking you to take what I'm giving you now. I closed the folder. I said, okay. He nodded. We finished our coffee. I drove home. I put the folder in the back of my closet, behind winter coats, in a box labeled documents. I did not tell Tom. Earl died on a Thursday in November. James was 13. The funeral was on Saturday. Small, quiet, the way Earl would have wanted. People from the hardware store. A few contractors he had worked with for decades. My father, who drove 3 hours and held my hand during the service without saying anything. Tom stood at the front of the church, looking appropriately grief-stricken in the way people look when they are performing grief, rather than feeling it. He accepted condolences with a handshake and a nod. He did not cry. James cried. Quietly, with his jaw set, the way a 13-year-old boy cries when he is trying to be strong and cannot quite manage it. I sat next to him and held his hand and let him. That night, after the reception, after people had left and the food had been put away and James had finally fallen asleep, Tom came into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. He set a manila envelope on the counter beside the sink. I need you to sign these, he said. I turned off the water. I dried my hands. I opened the envelope. Divorce papers. I read the first page. Then I set it down and looked at my husband, this man I had lived with for 13 years. This man whose father had been buried 12 hours ago. This man who had come home smelling like a bar at 2 a.m. more times than I could count. Okay, I said. He blinked. Okay? Yes, I picked up the pen he had brought. Do you have a hard surface? He stared at me. I signed every page. I handed the envelope back to him. He stood in the kitchen holding it, looking slightly cheated as though he had prepared for a fight and found the door already open. That's it? He said. That's it, I said. I finished washing the dishes. He left. What happened next, Tom told people later, was that he asked Margaret to leave. What actually happened was that Tom arrived home the following afternoon, I assumed from wherever he had spent the night, and informed me that I needed to be out by the end of the week. I said, "This is my house, Tom," he said, "my father's house." I said, "Your father transferred the deed to me 14 months ago. George Marsh has the records. You're welcome to call him." The expression on Tom Whitfield's face in that moment, I have thought about it many times since. It was not anger, not immediately. It was the specific look of a man whose entire understanding of a situation has just been revised without his consent. A blank, recalibrating stillness. Then, what? I went to the closet. I got the box. I brought the folder to the kitchen table and laid the deed in front of him. He read it. He read it again. "This isn't," he started. "He can't," he did, I said. 14 months ago. George Marsh handled it. It's recorded at the county clerk's office. Tom looked up. His face had moved through the recalibration and arrived somewhere darker. "Get out," he said. Quietly. The specific quiet that I recognized the quiet before something worse. "Tom," I said, just as quietly. "This is my house. Legally recorded. You can call George Marsh right now if you'd like. Get out." I looked at him. "James and I will be outside tonight," I said, "because I think you need some time with this." But we will be back tomorrow morning. And I would encourage you to speak to George before then. I went to James's room. He was sitting on his bed, having heard everything, his face very still and very young. "Get your jacket," I said, "and your school bag. We're going to Aunt Carol's for the night." He got his jacket. He got his school bag. At the door, he stopped and looked back at the house, at the only home he had ever known, and then at me. "Mom," he said, "are we okay?" I smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "We're more than okay," I said. "I promise." We walked out into the November night. We slept at my sister Carol's house, James on the pull-out sofa, me in the guest room, both of us listening to the wind off the Kentucky hills. In the morning, I called George Marsh. George was 70, unhurried, and had the specific calm of a man who had handled enough human catastrophe to be unsurprisable. "I expected your call," he said. "Earl told me to expect it. Tom is going to contest this. He's welcome to try," George said. "The deed transfer was clean, Margaret, 14 months ago. Earl was of sound mind and body. I have documentation of that specifically. The LC restructure is equally clean. James is the registered owner. You are the managing trustee until his 18th birthday." A pause. "Tom has no standing. He won't accept that." "No," George said. "He won't. But accepting it isn't required. The law doesn't need his acceptance." I sat with that for a moment. "George," I said, "Earl, did he say anything to you?" "About why?" A pause. "He said," George replied carefully, "that he had made mistakes he couldn't undo, and that this was the one thing he could do." Another pause. "He also said you were the only person in that business who actually understood it, and that James deserved to inherit something real." I thanked him. I hung up. I sat in Carol's kitchen for a long time, watching the morning come up over the hills. The will reading was 10 days after the funeral. George's office. A conference room with wood-paneled walls and a window overlooking Main Street. Tom arrived with a lawyer he had hired from Lexington, a young man in an expensive suit who carried himself with the confidence of someone who had not yet been surprised by anything. I arrived with George. I wore the gray dress I wore to church. My hair was neat. I had slept well. Tom looked at me across the conference table with the expression he had been wearing for 10 days, a compressed, furious patience, the look of a man who believes the situation is temporary. George read the will. Earl's personal assets, savings, retirement accounts, personal property were divided between Tom and a local charity Earl had supported for years. This was expected. Tom's expression did not change. Then, George read the section on business assets. Whitfield Hardware, or rather, the LC that Whitfield Hardware had become, was not part of Earl's estate, because Earl had not owned it. James Whitfield owned it, had owned it for 18 months. Tom's lawyer leaned forward. "That transfer will be contested on what grounds?" George said, with the patience of a man who has already written the answer to this question. The young lawyer opened his mouth. George laid the documentation on the table. Clean, organized, 14 months of recorded paperwork, medical attestations, notarized signatures. The young lawyer read. He read for a long time. Then he sat back. He said something quietly to Tom. Tom's face in that moment was the face of a man who has pulled on a door he expected to be locked and found it not just open, but gone entirely. The door, the frame, the wall around it, gone. He looked at me. I looked back at him. I did not smile. I did not say anything. I simply looked at him the way Earl used to look at things quietly, without performance, with the patience of someone who had already done the reading. Tom stood up. He said, "This isn't over." George said, "I'm afraid it is, Tom." Tom left. His lawyer gathered his papers slowly, with the careful movements of a man recalibrating his invoice, and followed. It was over. Not dramatically, not with a speech or a confrontation or a moment of operatic justice. Just over. The way Earl had always handled things. Quietly, without noise. James turned 14. I threw him a small party. Carol's family, a few friends from school, George Marsh, who brought a card and stayed for cake and talked to James for 20 minutes about the hardware business, with the seriousness of a man speaking to a young colleague. James asked good questions. He always did. Afterward, when the guests had gone and James was doing the dishes, he had started doing the dishes without being asked, around the time of Earl's funeral, and had not stopped. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee. My kitchen table. My kitchen. My house. I thought about Earl sitting at this table for 10 years. The coffee. The newspaper. The way he would look up sometimes and say, "You see that?" and mean a dozen things at once. I thought about what he had said in his own kitchen that Saturday morning with the folder between us. A man can talk himself into a lot of inaction if he tries hard enough. I thought, yes. And sometimes, at the end, he talks himself back out of it. Tom left Harlan 8 months after the divorce. I heard, through the particular information network of a small town, that he had gone to Louisville. Then, Cincinnati. I did not follow the information closely. He did not pay child support with any consistency. George handled that, quietly and effectively, through the appropriate channels. James did not ask about his father often. When he did, I answered honestly and briefly, and then let him lead wherever he wanted to go with it. Sometimes he wanted to talk. Mostly he didn't. I followed his lead. He was, at 14, at 15, at 16, becoming someone recognizable, serious, observant, precise in the way he used words, with a dry humor that appeared without warning and made me laugh in a way I had forgotten I was capable of. He came to the hardware store with me on Saturdays. He learned the accounts the way I had learned them, by paying attention, by asking questions, by understanding that numbers were honest and told you exactly where things stood. By 16, he was running the Saturday inventory counts without being asked. By 17, he had a better relationship with 2 of our major contractors than Tom had ever managed. By the time he turned 18, James's 18th birthday, March, cold still, but with the first suggestion of something warmer underneath. I made his favorite dinner pot roast, the recipe Earl had taught me in the first year of the marriage, standing in this kitchen, showing me the right way to sear the meat before it went in the pot. After dinner, after the cake, after Carol's family had gone home, James and I sat at the kitchen table. I put a folder in front of him. He looked at it. Then at me. "Grandpa's?" he said. "His and yours," I said. "Open it." He opened it. He read slowly, carefully, the way he did everything. The LLC documents, the business registration. His name, at 11 years old, listed as owner. My name as trustee. He read the current financial statements, 8 years of accounts, carefully maintained. He looked up. "Mom," he said. "This is yours," I said. "It has always been yours. I've just been keeping it safe." He looked back at the documents. "Why did Grandpa?" "Because he loved you," I said. "And because he understood, at the end, that love sometimes means doing the one concrete thing you can do." I paused. He couldn't undo what had already happened, but he could make sure you had something real to. James was quiet for a long time. Then he said, he knew. About Dad. And us. "Yes, and he didn't stop it," I said. "No, and he knew that. It was the thing he carried." I looked at my son, this 18-year-old person who had been a 13-year-old boy sitting on a bed with his school bag, asking if we were okay. He wasn't a perfect man, but he did what he could, and it was enough. James nodded slowly. He closed the folder. He put his hand on it for a moment, the gesture of someone taking possession of something they intend to take care of. "Okay," he said. "Then let's make it worth it." Whitfield Hardware is still on Main Street in Harlan. The sign is new. James had it repainted the summer he turned 19. Same name, cleaner font. The contractors still come. The accounts are still honest. The margins are better than they were under Earl, because James has a precision with numbers that Earl always said reminded him of me. I still keep the books. James asked me to stay on not as trustee, not as guardian, just as myself, as the person who knew the business and the town and the accounts better than anyone. I said yes. Tom called once, 2 years after the divorce was final. He asked about the business. I told him to call George Marsh. He didn't call again. My father, who had nodded that Sunday afternoon when Earl's offer came, who had agreed to something he didn't fully understand on my behalf, came to see me the Christmas after the will reading. He sat at my kitchen table and said, without preamble, I should have asked you first. I poured him coffee. Yes, I said, you should have. He nodded. He drank his coffee. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. We have better ones now. On a Tuesday evening in spring, I was closing up the store. James had gone home early. He had a dinner with a contractor from the next county, a relationship he had been building for 6 months. I was alone in the store, going through the last of the day's receipts. Outside the window, Main Street was doing what it had always done, existing quietly, in the particular way of small towns, with the unhurried certainty of a place that has been here long before you and will be here long after. I thought about the girl who had sat in a church 20 years ago and let her father make a decision for her. I thought about the woman who had stood in a kitchen holding divorce papers at midnight and signed them without argument. I thought about a folder in the back of a closet, behind winter coats. I thought about Earl at this table, in this store, going over accounts. You see that? Yes, I thought. I see it. I turned off the lights. I locked the door. I drove home through the Kentucky evening, past the hills, past the church, past the diner on Route 9, where everybody's business was everybody's business. I pulled into the driveway of my house. I sat in the car for a moment, looking at the lights in the window. James must have come home early. I thought, this is mine. Not defiantly, not triumphantly, just clearly, the way numbers are clear, the way honest things are clear. I went inside. Some silences are cowardice, some silences are strategy, and some silences, the ones kept by dying men at kitchen tables, over coffee, for years, are the most profound form of love. Earl Whitfield never said enough of the right things while he was alive, but he said everything that mattered in the end. In a folder, behind winter coats. Waiting. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Revenge Real Stories for more unforgettable tales of betrayal, justice, and the quiet victories that change lives forever. And tell us in the comments, do you believe Earl Whitfield redeemed himself in the end, or was his final act simply too late? Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace, it's survival, and it's finally realizing that what is truly yours can never be taken away. Thank you for watching Revenge Real Stories. We'll see you in the next story.